Okay, welcome back. We have come to a very, very important step in the process. And that step is putting in the pistons. And as you can kind of see, or I've alluded to already, I've already put two of them in. Okay, as you can see. And so far, the process, has gone pretty smoothly. And so far, I'm enjoying the results. Now, before I started on this, I watched a ton of videos. I watched Summit, because, these are Pro LS, Summit Pro LS Pistons. So I watched the Summit Engine Building 101 series. They have installing pistons into the block video, which was pretty good. But the problem was I didn't have the same ring compressor tool that they used. I've got one of these cheapos from Harbor Freight, okay? And I know on a previous video, I've complained about the quality of Harbor Freight tools. And, I made the commitment that I wasn't going to buy any more Harbor Freight tools. At least, things that have an obvious opportunity to break. However, I bought this ring compressor many months ago before I made my commitment to not buy Harbor Freight. So anyway, I've got it. This is what I'm using. I want to get these pistons installed. I don't feel like waiting on, getting another ring compressor to arrive. My process, after a lot of research on the best way, the book, I've been using the book. The book is really detailed, in some regards even almost over detailed. I found my own methodology to make things smoother, and I've done I've done 1 and 3, and I'm going to go ahead and do 5 and 7, and I'll bring you along for the ride. So anyway, I'm going to put this camera on my forehead, and then we'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully you could see this okay. Before I go any further, I am going to fix my oil can because this is driving me bananas. And I need to be able to use this. So, all right. Now, there's a couple steps involved here. The first thing I do is you have to get down here and you have to lower the crank journal here that this piston's going to ride on to its lowest possible point. So as you're looking down into the cylinder, you want it to be as far down as it's going to be. All right. And then the next thing I'm going to do is take my good old Cleveite assembly lube and lube the hell out of that crank journal, okay? Don't be shy, okay? Just glob it on there. Probably the more the better, all right? You see what I'm doing here? Hopefully the camera on my forehead captures this adequately. But basically, I'm lubing this baby up. I don't want to, and I'm going to tell you why this is so important in a minute. I'll give you an example. And a little problem I ran into a couple of days ago that I discovered. And one thing is when you're doing this job, when you get the crank back from the machine shop after they've balanced it, make sure it is clean. Okay, make sure these little oil galleys here, these little plugs, are clean. Blow air through them, because what happened was during the pre-assembly step, it appears as though there was some particles that got caught in between my bearings here and the crank journal, and it scored them, okay? And the only way these little scores could have happened was as if there was microscopic little metal pieces that were caught between the bearing and the journal. So I've checked the journal. The journal's okay. There's no scores that I could tell. Fortunately, the journal's okay. But these bearings, they could probably be used. But look, I have no intention of tearing the bottom half of the engine apart if, for whatever reason, I have bearing problems. I've got it apart now. I want to start, I've come this far. So what I did was I went and got all new connecting rod bearings. Okay, I just don't want to take any chances. All right. So anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out a pair of new connecting rod. Now, clearly you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, with the old connecting rod bearings, you know, you did your pre-assembly checks. Don't you have to pre-assembly check again? And maybe, I don't know, but I'm going to assume because these are the exact same bearings, I'm going to assume that the clearances and everything are the same, okay? These are the new ones, and here's a box of the old ones, and the numbers are identical, okay? So I'm going to assume that everything should be the same. So anyway, I'm just going to pull out these old bearings, toss them in here, and lesson learned, make sure that crank is clean before you spin anything on it, okay? So anyway, old bearings, lesson learned. All right, so they're new. I took them right out of the box. So I'm gonna get my mineral spirits. I'm gonna clean everything up. Okay, I mean, again, I don't wanna run into these problems again. So I'm gonna clean up these bearings with some mineral spirits, make sure they're good and clean. Stand by as I do this. And then I'm going to go ahead and just, for the heck of it, actually I'm going to mark these bolts so that I know which one they came in from. And I'm going to take these out. And I'm going to clean this guy up here, this cap. Make sure it's good and clean. Again, I don't want anything to get screwed up here. I've come this far. Take a few minutes to clean, isn't going to kill anybody. I'm just going to clean this baby up nice and good, okay? All right, so these are clean. Grab me a new rag so I can wipe everything down, make sure it's all dry. All right, dry, 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 and then I'm gonna wipe. I think I may have put some oil on here at some point. I'm gonna wipe that off these bolts. All right, let's see, where are we at? All right, so now we are going to put the bearings onto the rod. All right, now on here you'll see it says right here, lower. See where it says STD lower? So lower means it goes into the lower part of the cap. So we're just gonna line up the little notch. Go ahead and put this baby in here. Make sure it's pushed down. Here's the chamfered edge. Here's the squared edge. We're gonna take the connecting rod. Here's the little notch. See where it says upper? Right here, upper, little notch. We're gonna line it up. We're gonna push it down in there, make sure it's flat, push it on good down there, and then we are gonna lube the hell out of it. All right, good and lubed. We don't want any scratches, no scoring, no problems. We want this baby to fire right up and run good and run long for a long time. Trying to get this right the first time. Now, granted, I'm a newbie at this. This is literally the first engine I've ever built, but good heavens, it's not hard. It's actually easier, much easier than I thought. But that said, I want to get it right. All right, so new bearings, cleaned it up. We're ready to stick it into the cylinder, all right? Now, this is probably the most critical part. We need to make sure that things are in the right place, okay? So first, I'm checking the shelf to make sure that little dimple is in the opening, and it is. It's not centered, but it could be anywhere in here. All right, then I'm going to flip it over, and remember, this is the front side. It's going to go this way, chamfered edge. See that? It's going to go towards the fillet down here. So, so then we want to make sure our rings are arranged right. Okay, so the top ring needs to be 180 degrees, the opening from the second ring, which it is. All right, and then there's my expander, and then the bottom has to see the opening on the bottom oil wiper right there, and then it needs to be about, you know, far away from the opening on the top oil wiper, which it is. All right, and let's make sure it's adequately seated all the way around, which it is. Lots of fuzz. All right, so everything is in the right spot. So at this point, I'm gonna get some oil. Well, actually, before I do that, let me set this down gently so those rings don't move. And this will make life a lot easier if you oil this cylinder up really good. Just pour that oil in your hand, lots of it, and just slap it in there, baby. Get that thing all greased up. Okay, get it greased up. The more of this you put in here, the better off you'll be, in my opinion. We're greasing this up really, really good. And then, this is the part where I deviated from all the instructions I've read. I take a little bit of assembly lube, which in my opinion is a better lube than motor oil. And I just put a little bit right here on the top of the cylinder so that allows the piston, when it drops in, to just go in so easily. Okay, so a little bit of assembly lube, not a lot. All right, now get a rag, stay clean. I don't know why this is like this, but we'll put that aside. Now oil the hell out of this. Okay, just oil, 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 oil. Don't miss any spots. Good and oiled. Okay. Let's flip it over. Oil, 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 oil. Make sure the skirts are good and oiled too. Again, make sure this is good and oiled. All right, now, one last time. Make sure these rings are in the right place. Top ring, second ring, 180 degrees off, front, and then we've got the opening for the bottom wiper, the opening for the top wiper, and the little notch for the shelf is right there. All right, so let's just make sure these are all gonna behave, because I'll tell you what, this is probably one of the most critical steps. Now, this is a method, again, I didn't see this on anybody's video, no books, nothing. This is what I came up with on my own. But I'm using my rod vise to gently set the piston in here. I'm not tightening it down, but just enough so there's a little leverage and it sits in there nicely. And then the way this thing works is you press on this, and as you open this whole thing expands open, right? So then you take this tool, and this is when you turn this, see what happens? It closes, the circumference of this closes. And then to open it back up again, you just push this little knob right here, okay? There weren't many videos on YouTube of how this thing works, but, oh, by the way, if you also lube this up really good, that helps, okay? So just anywhere anything has to slide, it's good if it's nice and lubed. All right. So then what we're going to do here is I'm just going to simply slide it over top. All right. Try not to bump the rings because I don't want the rings to shift around. And then we're going to tighten it down. Okay. Tighten it down. And as I'm tightening it down, it's compressing the rings onto the piston until you can't turn it anymore. Okay? Now, there you go. It's ready to go in. All right? So what I like to do, come back over, make sure nothing's sticking out. It's not going to be perfectly balanced in here. That's fine. Just make sure nothing is sticking out where it shouldn't, okay? Now, how does this go in? Remember, we labeled them front, front. So you always want the chamfered edge facing the fillet or also on the same side as the intake valve, which is the big one. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and set this gently in here. Let the piston skirts fall below, okay? And it's just gonna sit there because of this compressor. All right, now what I like to do is take a bunch of napkins. You could use a rag, whatever, okay? And I stuff them in here because I just don't want to mess up that nice finish of those pistons, okay? Take a hammer, the butt end, a nice rubber end is ideal. Okay, this actually works really well because it's very top heavy. Okay, then reach up under here and grab the bottom of the connecting rod. Hold it the whole time. All right, don't let that bump the journal, whatever you do. Okay, and then just boom, 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 boom. All right. I've got my hand on the journal or on the connecting rod right now. Oh, look at that. It's in there. Perfect. See? Look how nicely that went in there. That went in there nice and easy. And believe it or not, because I put so much lube on here, I could push it down the rest of the way. All right, so I am going to use my hand to guide it onto the crank journal. All right, see that? See how nice and easy that went? All right. All right, so now I'm going to take the cap, and it's easy to remember which side goes which because not only did I put a mark on it, but there's letters and numbers on the top and the bottom. So you just line them up, okay? Easy peasy. All right, and let's see, I put a mark on one of these bolts. I don't think it matters. But I think there was a little mark on here to say that this was the side with the little mark that I put the magic marker on. I think it just came off when I cleaned it. All right, we're going to tighten these by hand. And this isn't easy because my hands are all lubed up. Put the other one in here. And actually, it makes it a little easier if you go ahead and turn the crank a little bit. All right, get that a little closer to you. Put it in there nice by hand. All right. Now I'm going to try to get some of this oil off my hands. All right, and then I'm going to take my little ratchet here and just tighten them. I'm not tightening them all the way, just kind of getting them snug. See that? Nice and snug. All right, not going crazy. All right, shake it back a little bit, back and forth, and that tells us that we've done a fine job installing that. All right, so if I go and look up, I can see that there's my piston, and if I turn this, look how nice that turns. That tells me that the rings are in there properly and everything's seated just fine. All right, And you know what, for the hell of it, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little more oil in here, just to, because I'm gonna have to lift it up and down a couple times. So anyway, there you have it. What'd you think? Pretty easy putting the piston in. You know, have to thank a lot of folks, Summit, for a good video. The book I'm using, great book. A bunch of other folks on the internet. And just a little bit of thinking about it. Take your time. Come up with, you know, sometimes everything isn't on the internet, and you just have to improvise, okay? But take your time so you don't do anything stupid or damaging. That said, I am going to go ahead and put the rest of the pistons in. Basically, the procedure that I'm using for the other 5 pistons is the same exact as what I just showed you. So I'm going to do that off camera, and I'll be back on camera when I have the last one in, and then when we're ready to tighten down, we have to torque the bolts on the crank there. So we'll have to torque all this down, okay? Don't forget to lube this up really good, okay? So we'll torque this up, and I'll come back on camera when we're ready to button this up really good. All right, thanks so much. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're going to drop the crank fillet, the connecting rod fillet, down to the bottom, right about there, okay? Oops, right about there, all right? And that'll set us up to do the next piston. All right, so first thing we're gonna do here is oil this down really well. All right, spreading this oil around is nice. And then we're gonna make sure that everything's lined up. So we've got the bottom oil wiper here, the top oil wiper opening here, the second ring opening here, and the top ring opening 180 degrees off. And the little nub right there for the shelf is in the right spot. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put this in the vise. All right, just verifying the opening here, the bottom opening here, the oil ring openings are in the right spot. So this is ready to go. So at this point, we're gonna take our piston ring compressor and open it back up. And real easy, you just press this button to open it and turn this dial to close it. All right, so we're gonna close it a little bit, and then carefully, so we don't screw up the position of the rings, we're gonna slip it over, okay? But just one more check of the rings. So I like to hold it by the little latch and then just carefully guide it over. Don't bump the rings. And then start to turn it. You can kind of hear the rings compressing. And then once it stops, you're done. Take it out. And then at this point, we're just looking to make sure that nothing looks out of the ordinary. There's nothing sticking out, top or bottom. That looks good. I leave about this much of the piston skirt showing. Okay, I'm getting real close to the ring, so that's kind of, I wouldn't go any higher than that, obviously. All right. So now this goes into 6, and it's labeled 6 and B for pointing to the back. And remember, here's the chamfered edge. Where is my lube? There's no lube on here. Let's lube that up. All right, now that's good and lubed. All right, so once again, 6 back, 6 back, chamfered edge. And we're just going to gently lower it into there and let the piston skirts go inside the cylinder wall there. And as I mentioned before, one of the most important parts is to make sure that the ring compressor is flat, sitting flat on the surface of the block. Okay, if there's any gaps, that's gonna prevent the rings from dropping down in there. So make sure that this is flush up against here. All right. I'm going to put our little cushioning rag in here and our nice heavy hammer with the rubber butt end on top of that. I'm going to reach up from below and make sure I can hold the connecting rod. One last push on here to make sure it's flush, and we're going to go ahead and tap it in there. All right. It's almost no effort at all to get this tapped in here. Very, very easy. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and put the oil in now so it lubes up against the cylinder walls, because we're going to turn this up and down a few times. Looks like I got to fill up my oil can here. All right, so it's in there nice and good. We only have one more to do, thank God. All right, and now we go to the bottom part of the engine. And we're going to, with our hand, gently push down, using your other hand to grab the connecting rod. Gently push down. See how I'm guiding the connecting rod? Gently push down till it, if it gets stuck, don't force it. Just gently guide it onto the crank journal. Okay? See that? All right. Now we're going to take our cap and bolts. And don't forget, what's this missing? Assembly lube. Be generous. Then it's easy to remember which side goes on which, because there's some letterings and numbering here, and it matches up with the lettering and numbering here. Just push it in there, grab one of your bolts, and thread it by hand. All right, now I'm gonna turn the engine over so that this one is a little easier to access. Grab my 11mm socket, go ahead and snug it down. Whoops, going the wrong way. There we go. All right, not tight, but just snug. All right. So that's in there good. All right. And then finally, we're going to take we're going to turn the engine over. Just make sure that everything is functioning smooth. Make sure nothing's binding. Looks pretty good. I'm reasonably satisfied. Time to move on to the last one. All right. Welcome back. So basically where we're at right now is I've gone ahead and I've installed all of the pistons. And you've seen that worked out pretty good. You know, everything's kind of moving along. So now it's time to go ahead and torque the pistons down. So in case you're wondering, I switched cameras too. That GoPro 7 I was using just had all kinds of weird artifacts, graying out, blurriness, streaks of light. I just couldn't make any heads or tails of it. So back to a cell phone camera, which, you know, these things do pretty good. So anyway, hopefully it provides a better product, a better video. Anyway, what I've got set up here, I've got the engine on the stand. I've got it flipped over, and yeah, I'm just basically at this point ready to start torquing these down. Now, what do I torque it to? So the nice thing about buying from Summit is that if you misplace the instructions, because everything that you buy from Summit comes with the sheet of paper, instructions, torque settings, etc. If you misplace it, you can always go onto Summit's website, look up your order, and find you know, whatever it is. So I looked up my connecting rods that I bought, went to the page, and sure enough, I downloaded these instructions, which have torque settings on them right here. So it says here for my particular connecting rods, it says recommended torque would be 2 steps, 30 foot-pounds plus another 50 degrees, okay? Or if you don't have angle, 3 steps to 82 foot-pounds, okay? So I've got the angle, so we're gonna do 30 pounds and then we're gonna add 50 degrees, all right? So, so anyway, let's go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to get a marker so that I can mark every time that I've completed one. So, and I'm also going to turn the engine over so that I can get easier access, all right, to these guys. So let's see, this is flipped up. Well, we'll just go ahead and start with the first one and work our way back. All right, so let's go ahead and start with this guy here. And I've got my torque wrench already set for 30 pounds. And let me just double check. 30 pounds. Yep, good to go. And yeah, let's just go ahead and do this. All right, there's our 30 pounds. to get out the AC Delco torque wrench. This is a nice, this is a pretty decent torque wrench. It has to calibrate and you see the zeros. And then basically, I already have it on angle. You'll see here in a minute. Well, it takes a few seconds here to... Sometimes it's better to have it sitting still and probably even in its container for it to calibrate. I'm holding it so it's not... Let's go ahead and put it in its container. Yep, there it goes. So as soon as I set it down into its container, its case, it calibrated. So you see right now it's set to 51 degrees. So I'm gonna go ahead and bump, well actually I have to take it to 50. So, and then once you get it to 50, you hit the C, and then there you go. So we're gonna go ahead and do 50 pounds. Or not 50 pounds, 50 degrees. All right. Now, of course, this is a 1/2-inch torque wrench, so I got the adapter here. We'll go ahead and put that adapter on. And we'll go ahead and get our 11mm. All right, ready? 50 degrees. That took some force. All right, let's reset it. Ready? That was not particularly easy, but we got it done. All right. So we're gonna set it down. And I'm going to put a mark here indicating that indeed I have done these two. All right? All right.